Ma'am, you're not going anywhere until I scan a valid ID. That badge doesn't mean anything to me.
That badge is level 5 clearance. I'm the Chief General Counsel. You are violating policy and the 4th Amendment.
Okay, who you say you are? Turn around, hands behind your back now.
Do not touch me. If you cuff me, you will end your career.
Stop resisting.
I am not resisting.
Officer Derek Vance had been wearing the badge of the Capital City Police Department for just over 6 years when he made the decision that would implode his career and cost the taxpayers of the state a staggering $6.5 million. At 32 years old, Vance was considered a proactive officer, the kind who prided himself on instinct and what he called street intuition. He walked with a heavy stride, convinced that his authority was absolute and his judgment beyond reproach. But that Tuesday morning in the sun-drenched lobby of the state office building, his intuition was catastrophically wrong. He wasn't patrolling a high-crime district or breaking up a bar fight at 2:00 a.m. He was working a substitute shift at the security checkpoint of a government building filled with lawyers, bureaucrats, and administrative staff. And the woman he decided to target wasn't a criminal. She was Evelyn Ross, the 54-year-old Chief General Counsel for the Department of Public Safety. She was the woman who wrote the very policies Vance was sworn to uphold, and she was the highest-ranking legal authority in the agency that employed him. What Vance did next, ignoring her high-level clearance, rejecting her explanation of the law, and handcuffing her in front of the very colleagues she supervised, would become a definitive case study in how arrogance and implicit bias can dismantle a police department's credibility in a matter of minutes. Before we dive into the details of this infuriating encounter, I want to ask, where are you tuning in from today? We have a community of truth seekers from all over the country. And if this is your first time here, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We bring you these stories because accountability only happens when the light of truth shines on the shadows of authority. Your support helps us keep that light burning. The state office building is a towering structure of glass and steel reflecting the harsh morning sun of a humid July Tuesday. It is the nerve center of state operations, a place where the air conditioning hums efficiently and the floors are polished to a mirror shine. At 8:45 a.m., the lobby was bustling. Men and women in tailored suits moved with purpose, clutching leather briefcases and travel mugs, flashing badges at the electronic turnstiles to gain entry to the elevators. It was an environment of order and protocol. Officer Derek Vance stood near the metal detector's arms crossed over his chest, watching the flow of people with a critical, almost predatory gaze. He was bored. He usually worked patrol in the entertainment district where the action was visceral and immediate. Standing guard in a lobby felt beneath him a babysitting gig for people who pushed paper. He adjusted his utility belt, the leather creaking in the quiet hum of the lobby. He was looking for something to do, something to validate his presence. He watched for anomalies, someone walking too fast, someone looking too nervous, someone who didn't fit the picture of a government employee. And then he saw her. Evelyn Ross walked through the revolving doors with the grace of a woman who owns the room. She was wearing a charcoal gray suit that likely cost more than Vance's monthly salary, paired with a silk cream blouse and sensible polished heels. Her hair was styled in an elegant shortcut that framed a face marked by wisdom and years of intense intellectual labor. She carried a slim leather portfolio and a small purse. She looked every inch the executive she was. But to Officer Vance, whose lens on the world was narrowed by years of unchecked bias and a rigid us versus them mentality, she looked like an anomaly. She was a black woman walking with undeniable confidence into a high-security state facility, and for reasons he couldn't articulate but deeply felt that confidence agitated him. Evelyn Ross had spent 25 years climbing the legal ladder, earning a reputation as a velvet hammer, soft-spoken, polite, but utterly devastating in a courtroom. She had started her career as a public defender, fighting for the indigent before moving to the Attorney General's office, and finally, 5 years ago, being appointed as the Chief General Counsel for the Department of Public Safety. Her role was critical. She managed the legal risks for the entire state police force, the highway patrol, and the corrections department. She drafted the use of force policies. She reviewed the liability claims. She was the person who decided whether the state would settle a lawsuit or fight it. Ironically, she was currently finalizing a new directive regarding Fourth Amendment compliance in public buildings, a policy designed to protect citizens from overzealous security measures. That morning, Evelyn was mentally rehearsing her opening remarks for a 9:30 a.m. budget meeting with the state comptroller. She needed to secure funding for body-worn camera storage servers, a massive expense but a necessary one for transparency. She approached the security turnstile, her mind occupied with spreadsheets and conviction rates. She didn't notice the young officer staring at her. She didn't notice the way his eyes narrowed as she retrieved her agency credentials from her purse. She simply wanted to get to her office on the 14th floor, pour a cup of tea, and review her notes. Evelyn reached the turnstile and held up her badge, a gold laminate card with a holographic state seal and the bold letters, All Access, Level 5 Clearance. It was the highest security clearance available, issued only to agency directors and top legal counsel. She tapped it against the reader. The light blinked red. A soft buzz indicated access denied. Evelyn frowned slightly, wiped the card on her sleeve, and tapped it again. Red light. Buzz. It was a technical glitch, annoying but not uncommon in a building with outdated infrastructure. She sighed, stepping back to try a different turnstile. "Hold it right there," a voice boomed across the lobby. Evelyn froze. She turned to see Officer Vance striding toward her, his hand resting instinctively near his holster, his posture aggressive. The chatter in the lobby dipped in volume. Evelyn offered a polite, tired smile. "Good morning, officer. It seems the readers are acting up again. I'm just going to try the next one." "You're not trying anything until I see some ID," Vance said, stepping into her personal space. The proximity was unnecessary, an intimidation tactic he used on the street to unsettle suspects. Evelyn held up her badge again, the gold laminate catching the light. "I have my ID right here. I'm Evelyn Ross, Chief General Counsel for the department. My badge seems to be demagnetized." Vance didn't even look at the name. He looked at the picture, then at her, then dismissed the credential entirely. "That doesn't scan. It's not valid. I need your driver's license. I need to run a background check before you go any further." Evelyn paused. The request was absurd. "Officer, I am already an employee of this agency. My background was checked by the FBI before I was hired. I'm already inside the security perimeter. You can simply manually verify the badge number with the front desk if the scanner is down." "I didn't ask you what I can do." Vance snapped, his voice echoing off the marble floors. "I told you what you're going to do. Hand over your driver's license. Now. I need to scan it into the system to see if you have any outstanding warrants." This was the moment where policy met ignorance. Evelyn knew the law because she had written it. The state policy, specifically Code 402 Section B, prohibited the scanning of personal driver's licenses for employees entering their own place of work unless there was articulable suspicion of a crime. It was a privacy safeguard she had fought hard to implement just last year. "Officer," Evelyn said, her voice dropping an octave, becoming the calm, measured tone she used when cross-examining a hostile witness. "I cannot give you my driver's license for a scan. That is a violation of Agency Policy 402. I am an employee. This is a valid Level 5 credential. If you are unable to verify it, please call your supervisor, Sergeant Miller. He knows me." Vance's face reddened. To him, this wasn't a legal discussion. It was a challenge. A black woman was quoting policy to him in a public lobby, refusing a direct order. His training, or perhaps his lack of it, kicked in. He interpreted her assertion of rights as resistance. "I don't care who you think you know. The machine didn't read your badge, which means you're unverified. For all I know, that badge is a fake. You're trespassing until I say otherwise. Give me the license, or we're going to have a problem." Do you think police officers should be required to memorize the specific privacy policies of the buildings they guard? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Evelyn Ross took a breath. She looked around the lobby. People were watching. A group of actuaries near the elevator bank had stopped talking. A paralegal from the environmental division was pretending to look at his phone while recording the interaction. Evelyn knew she had two choices: surrender her privacy and validate this officer's bullying, or stand her ground and uphold the policy she was sworn to defend. She chose the latter. "Officer, I am not refusing to identify myself," Evelyn stated clearly, ensuring the witnesses could hear. "I am presenting you with my government-issued agency ID. I am refusing your demand to unlawfully scan my private driver's license, which is a violation of my civil liberties and department regulations. I am asking you again to call Sergeant Miller or the watch commander." "You don't give the orders here," Vance shouted. The veneer of professionalism was gone. He was angry now. He felt the eyes of the crowd and felt his control slipping. He needed to reassert dominance. "You are obstructing an officer. You are refusing to comply with a lawful command. I'm not calling anyone. You're going to hand over that ID or you're going in cuffs." "I am the Chief General Counsel," Evelyn said, her voice steel. "I am the ranking legal officer for this building. You are making a mistake that will end your career. Do not touch me." Vance laughed, a short, sharp bark of disbelief. "Legal counsel. Yeah, and I'm the governor. You think you can just print a badge and walk into a secure government facility? Turn around. Hands behind your back." The lobby went deathly silent. The hum of the air conditioning seemed to roar. Evelyn stood tall, clutching her portfolio. "I will not turn around. I have committed no crime. I am asking you to verify my credentials manually, which is standard procedure." Vance didn't wait. He grabbed Evelyn's left arm, twisting it behind her back with forceful torque. Evelyn gasped in pain, dropping her portfolio. Her papers didn't scatter, but the heavy leather folio hit the marble with a loud slap. "Stop resisting," Vance yelled, pointing to the cameras he knew were watching, reciting the script he used on the streets. "I am not resisting," Evelyn cried out, the pain in her shoulder sharp and burning. "I am complying. You are hurting me." He spun her around, shoving her chest first against the cold metal of the turnstile. He pulled her other arm back, snapping the handcuffs onto her wrists. He ratcheted them tight, too tight. The metal bit into the soft skin of her wrists. "You're under arrest for trespassing, failure to identify, and disorderly conduct," Vance announced, breathless with exertion and adrenaline. "This is false arrest," Evelyn said, her face pressed against the turnstile, her cheek collecting the dust of the machine. "You are arresting the agency's general counsel. Look at the badge you just threw on the floor." Vance ignored the badge. He ignored the portfolio. He grabbed her by the bicep and hauled her upright. "You can tell it to the judge, lady. Right now, you're going to the station." A man in a blue suit stepped forward from the crowd. It was Michael Henderson, a senior tax attorney. "Officer, that is Evelyn Ross. She works here. She's the head lawyer for the police department. You need to stop." Vance pointed a finger at Henderson. "Back off. Unless you want to join her for obstruction, step back. This area is a crime scene." Henderson held up his hands and stepped back, but he kept his eyes on Evelyn. "We're recording Evelyn. We see this." "Thank you, Michael," Evelyn said, regaining her composure despite the handcuffs. She looked at Vance, her eyes burning with a cold, terrifying intelligence. "Officer, I want you to remember this moment. I want you to remember that I offered you a chance to call a supervisor. Now take me to the station." Vance marched her through the lobby. The walk of shame was intended to humiliate her, to show the observers that no one was above his authority. He paraded her past the security desk, past the elevators, and out through the revolving doors. But Evelyn Ross did not walk like a criminal. She walked with her head high, her posture perfect, her face a mask of determined fury. She wasn't thinking about the embarrassment. She was thinking about the litigation. She was drafting the complaint in her head. Count 1, unlawful seizure. Count 2, excessive force. Count 3, deprivation of rights under color of law. He shoved her into the back of his patrol car, his hand pushing down on her head, a gesture she found particularly demeaning. The back seat was hard plastic, smelling of stale sweat and disinfectant. As the door slammed shut, Evelyn closed her eyes. She took a deep breath. She was 54 years old. She had arthritis in her left shoulder. The position of her arms was agonizing, but she wouldn't give him the satisfaction of a complaint. Not yet. The drive to the precinct took 15 minutes. Vance played the radio loud, perhaps to drown out his own doubts or perhaps to annoy his prisoner. He glanced at her in the rearview mirror. She was staring out the window, watching the city pass by. She didn't look scared. That bothered him. Usually by this point, people were begging, crying, or screaming threats. She was silent. It was the silence of a predator waiting to strike, though Vance was too blind to see it. When they arrived at the precinct, Vance pulled into the sally port. He yanked her out of the car and marched her into the booking area. The booking room was a chaotic mix of phones, ringing officers, typing reports, and the low murmur of processing. The desk sergeant on duty was Thomas Miller, the very man Evelyn had asked Vance to call. Sergeant Miller was 58, a 30-year veteran who had seen it all. He was sipping coffee and reviewing the night shift logs when the doors swung open. He looked up, expecting a drunk driver or a shoplifter. His eyes landed on Officer Vance. Then they drifted to the person Vance was holding by the arm. Sergeant Miller choked on his coffee. He stood up so fast his chair toppled over backward with a crash. The room went silent. "Vance." Miller's voice was a low growl vibrating with confusion and horror. What? What are you doing?" "Got a trespasser from the State Building, Sarge," Vance said, puffing out his chest. "Refused to ID, resisted arrest, claimed she was some big-shot lawyer. Disorderly conduct." Miller walked around the desk. He didn't look at Vance. He looked at Evelyn Ross, who was standing there in her $2,000 suit, hands cuffed behind her back, a look of serene destruction on her face. "Ms. Ross," Miller whispered. "Hello, Sergeant Miller," Evelyn said smoothly. "I believe your officer here has made a significant error in judgment. He refused to verify my credentials. He refused to call you, and he has arrested the Chief General Counsel for the Department of Public Safety for trying to go to work." Vance froze. The air left the room. He looked from Miller to Evelyn. "Chief, General Counsel." Miller turned on Vance. His face was purple. "You arrested Evelyn Ross, the woman who signs the checks for the Legal Defense Fund, the woman who represents the commissioner. The scanner didn't work." Vance stammered, his confidence evaporating like water on hot pavement. "She wouldn't give me her driver's license. I thought she was faking." "She has a level 5 security badge," Miller roared. "You didn't check it. I thought it was fake." "Get those cuffs off her," Miller barked. "Now. Right now." Vance fumbled for his keys. His hands were shaking. The reality of what he had done was crashing down on him. He unlocked the cuffs. Evelyn rubbed her wrists. There were deep red indentations where the metal had dug in. A bruise was already forming on her forearm. "I'm so sorry, Ms. Ross," Miller said, looking ready to be sick. "I don't know what to say. This is insane." "It's not insane, Sergeant," Evelyn said, her voice icy. "It's a pattern. Officer Vance saw a black woman and assumed she didn't belong. He assumed I was a criminal because I didn't fit his profile of authority, and because of that, the city is about to write a very large check." The station commander, Captain Reynolds, burst into the room. He had been alerted by the watch commander. "What is going on, I heard?" He stopped dead when he saw Evelyn rubbing her wrists. "Ms. Ross," Reynolds said, pale, "please tell me this is a misunderstanding." "It is an arrest, Captain," Evelyn said. I was handcuffed, marched through the lobby of my own building, and transported here. I was battered, I was profiled, and I was humiliated. She turned her gaze to Vance, who was shrinking into the corner. I want his badge. I want his gun. And I want him off the street immediately. Captain, Vance tried to speak. I was just following procedure. Procedure, Evelyn snapped. I wrote the procedure. Officer Code 402 prohibits exactly what you did. You didn't follow procedure. You followed your bias. Captain Reynolds didn't hesitate. Vance badge and gun on the desk. You're on administrative leave pending investigation. Go wait in the conference room. Vance unclipped his holster with trembling hands. He placed his badge on the counter. The metallic clink sounded like a gavel striking a sounding block. He walked away, his head down, passing officers who wouldn't meet his eyes. They knew. Everyone knew. He was a dead man walking. Should police departments have a zero-tolerance policy for officers who refuse to call a supervisor when requested by a citizen with credentials? Drop your answer below. The legal fallout was swift and brutal. Evelyn Ross didn't just sue. She dismantled the department's defense strategy because she knew exactly where the weak points were. She hired an external civil rights firm to avoid a conflict of interest, but she guided the strategy. The lawsuit named Officer Derek Vance the Department of Public Safety and the city. The claims were irrefutable. Unlawful arrest. There was no probable cause. A malfunctioning door scanner is not a crime. Excessive force. The bruising on Evelyn's wrists and the strain on her shoulder were documented by a medical examiner within an hour of her release. False imprisonment. Every second she was in those cuffs was a violation of the Fourth Amendment. Civil rights violations. The suit argued successfully that Vance's demand for a driver's license was motivated by racial bias, as he had not stopped white employees whose badges malfunctioned in the past, a fact corroborated by security footage review. The city attorney's people Evelyn had mentored reviewed the Bodycam footage. It was damning. Vance's aggression was palpable. Evelyn's calmness was undeniable. There was no defense. They settled in record time to avoid a public trial that would have destroyed the department's reputation completely. The settlement was $6.5 million. It was one of the largest individual payouts for a wrongful arrest in the state's history. Officer Derek Vance was terminated 3 weeks after the incident. But Evelyn wasn't done. She petitioned the State Peace Officer Standards and Training Post Board to decertify him. She testified at his hearing not as a victim but as a legal expert. She dissected his actions, proving that he lacked the temperament and judgment required to hold police powers. Vance was decertified. He will never work as a police officer in the United States again. He is currently working in warehouse logistics. Evelyn Ross donated a portion of her settlement to establish a legal defense fund for women of color who have been wrongfully detained. She returned to work 2 weeks later. When she walked into the lobby of the state office building, the new security guards, retrained and strictly supervised, stood and nodded respectfully. She tapped her badge. It beeped green. She walked to the elevator, the architect of a fairer system bearing the scars of the battle it took to build it. This story isn't just about bad luck or a broken scanner. It's about the dangerous assumption that compliance means submission, and that authority is determined by who is wearing the uniform, not who knows the law. Officer Vance looked at a distinguished professional woman and saw a suspect because his bias blinded him to the reality of who stood before him. He thought the badge on his chest gave him the power to ignore the rights of others. He learned at a cost of $6. $5 million that true power lies in the law, and the law applies to everyone, even the police. We have to ask ourselves if this can happen to the Chief General Counsel of the police department. What happens to the nurse, the teacher, or the student who doesn't have the legal knowledge to fight back? What happens to the people whose stories don't end with a multi-million-dollar settlement, but with a criminal record for a crime they didn't commit? Thank you for watching. If you believe that officers must be held accountable for their ignorance of the law like this video, if you think stories like Evelyn's can change the system, share this with a friend. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the cases that define our justice system. Stay safe, know your rights, and never let anyone intimidate you into surrendering your dignity.